Small town. Damn, that's you strictly. Small town. Damn, that's you strictly. Small town. Damn, that's you strictly.
And we are back live on your number one sports podcast, All Things Sports. I'm your co-host, Small Town EP. As always, joined by your host, Wade Julian. I'm live from ATL. He's live from New York City. You should know the deal right now. We're back to give you the real in sports. June, how you doing? I know you had some commotion outside your apartment in New York City this evening. Glad you made it back to the crib. Ready for this weekend. Football's here,
Definitely.
EPL's here. You know, and it's funny because like for me, week one of preseason, not really exciting. Like week two, getting there. And then like once week two of preseason ends, you're getting into like week three and week four, and you're like, let's go. We're almost here, and there's still big things popping off in the NFL free agency market. Whew. AJ Terrell signed to Atlanta 4 years, 81 mil, 65.8 guaranteed. How big of an addition is this for the Falcons, June?
Well, I mean, this is their first round draft pick that a couple years ago, back in like 2020 or so. Um, Coming out of Clemson, we knew this was a all pro talent level kind of guy, where he had the potential to be that, especially with his size at that position. And since 2020, he's come in and do nothing but ball out. He's had uh, a lot of good seasons with Atlanta. That defense hasn't necessarily been the strongest in the NFL, or they haven't had that much pop to it in recent years. But with some additions that they made this offseason, like I think even adding a Jesse Bates last year, uh, is just a cheat code. Or excuse me, yeah, it's just a cheat code. So I'm excited for AJ Terrell. This is big money. This is well deserved. highest paid, if I'm not mistaken, right now, most guaranteed. Creed Humphrey also just got that deal. I know Chiefs fans are probably excited about that one, especially while the game's going on. It's pretty cool news to hear. Typically, it's like, oh, this guy got traded during the game. It's like, nah, yo, our center just got the highest bag a center's ever gotten
For real.
while we're trying to make the team. So that's got to be motivational if you're like the third string center on the Chiefs. But back to AJ Terrell, yeah, I think it's smart. They needed to lock up defensive cornerstone, um, and he's only 25 years old, so we look forward to him growing in the league and becoming a multi-time Pro Bowler and All Pro player.
And then we did see Dotson as well traded to the Eagles. And I mean, what can you say about this wide receiver being in Philly now with this offensive core and wide receiving core? It looks like just upgraded at the helm of their QB1.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can have a number one, like a number two wide receiver as your number three, it's always going to look good. And Philadelphia, I wouldn't say they necessarily needed this. They have depth at wide receiver, but the guys that go past Devontae Smith and AJ Brown aren't guys that stay healthy all the time. So this is, one of those things that they had the draft capital to do it, and it makes their offense much better because again, this is a guy who on some teams could compete for the number two starting, number two spot. I wouldn't say number one wide receiver. I think he has a little bit more growing to, but to his defense, he came into a situation in Washington where they haven't had that franchise guy. And we'll talk about Washington and, things they got going on since we're breaking down the East divisions today. But um, yeah, I think that Jahan Dotson has a lot to prove. You put him in a system like Nick Sirianni's offense with Jalen Hurts as a quarterback, and AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are the guys getting all the attention. Yeah, there's no reason he shouldn't, be able to develop into a really good wide receiver here.
Do you think they gave up too much to get him?
No, if you want to review the details for me, I think it was a third round pick and a seventh round pick,
In a
and
seventh
they
round
got
pick,
back
yeah.
up five. No, I mean I like that. Like the seven to me is nothing, and then the third, it's like, I mean, if you guys were to find this guy in the draft at this skill level right now, this year, would you use a third rounder on him? I think it's fair to say you would. He's still a young guy. It's not like Dotson's in his, seventh year or anything like that. He's 24 years old. So um, he's getting to that point physically where he's in his prime and athletic and mentally, he still has years to develop and become a really great player. So I like the trade for the Eagles. I'm not mad at this at all.
I guess since we're here, we'll start with the NFC East. We're doing the East Division breakdowns. We'll just go boom straight into the Eagles. June, their over under for their total wins is 10.5. They are set
Hmm.
to the over at minus 140. What are you thinking? Over 10.5 wins. Are they a lock for the division? Is there someone else that we might have to get into in a little bit that could be a very close contender?
I mean, I don't think we can say that they're a lock. We can't say anybody's a lock for this division. We say it every year. There's not been a back-to-back winner since the Eagles did it in the early 2000s, around 2002, 3, 4, around then. Um, Last year, the Cowboys won this division, so it's kind of fair to say the Eagles should win it based on that. The Commanders don't look like they're in position with Jaden Daniels, a rookie quarterback, and the Giants don't really look poised to, win this division right now, being as though they lost some key players. But yeah, Philly's definitely a 10-plus win team. They have to be, first of all, if they expect to, bounce back from last year and make some noise in the playoffs. Um, and they should definitely expect to win the division. I mean, this is a team who just a couple years ago was in the Super Bowl, and last year they had a fallout. They had one of the worst fallouts, and we were talking about them a couple weeks ago as far as their coaching um, relationship with the players and the quarterback specifically. Hey, it's week one coming up now. None of this matters. Sunday will be the last day for preseason, and then they'll have a week off and get to it week one. So this is definitely a 10 plus win team, though. I don't see how not. They've added a lot of talent. You know, they added Devin White in the middle. They get Chauncey Gardner Johnson back, um, and Saquon Barkley. Right, there's some other names on there, but these are some of the key names that they were able to add in free agency to help bolster up this roster again, alongside with the Jahan Dotson news that we heard today. So um, there's really no excuse for Philly to not win the division, and the same can be said for the Cowboys. But um, right now, Philly has all eyes on them as they are looking to answer some questions to fans and to critics around the league because um, they got to show like, yeah, we're not dysfunctional. This was just, what happened last year, thing of the past.
No, absolutely. And they got week one. That was a game that it's being played in Sao
Yeah, in Sao Paulo.
Paulo, against the Packers. I mean, that's definitely a team if you're in the NFC that you're more than likely going to see come January. So that's a tough matchup right off the bat. And then to play the NFC South and the AFC North. Yeah, the AFC North. Those, I mean, the North is a tough division. Obviously, the NFC South. We'll see. What happens with that division this year. But you do got to play Atlanta week 2. You do got to go to Tampa Bay and to New Orleans. So definitely going to be an interesting start to their season. Playing that first Sao Paulo game. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean Jordan Love versus J- uh, Jalen
Jalen
Hurts. Excuse
Hurts.
me. Wow, that's got to be exciting football. We saw what could be Jordan Love versus Jalen Hurts in 2022 when Aaron Rodgers got hurt on that Sunday night game in Philadelphia, and Jordan Love came out and played just a couple snaps and did good. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do, but more excited to see the hunger and the thirst that Philadelphia comes out with. I mean, Jalen Carter coming into his second year, and Jordan Davis going into his second year, third year, I believe. Um, N'Kobe Dean. They have guys, right? They have a lot of guys, and they got some cornerbacks that they've drafted in the last few years along to go alongside Darius Slay and James Bradbury. I'm excited to see Cooper DeJean, who they drafted out of Iowa, and also, they also drafted Keely Ringo last year, and I want to see what his development looks like because they took their first round pick on a corner out of Toledo. Uh, wow, I didn't write his name down, and it just slipped my head. This is a guy that I wanted to Quinion Mitchell. There you go, Quinion. So it was a guy that wanted the Colts to draft, but they landed him. So they've got talent, man, and there's no excuse. I'll keep saying that. That's what I'm excited to see for Philly. Week 8 at Cincinnati, Week 13 at Baltimore. You got games versus Joe Burrow and those boys on the road. You got a game versus Lamar Jackson, that Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Um, you know, Seems to be a fun AFC NFC thing. So those are some things I'm looking out for the Eagles this year. But I do expect them to be at least a 11 win team at minimum, and I got them winning the division. We'll start right there. I got the Eagles winning the
Mm.
division this year.
Okay, okay. Let's go over to Washington. We just spoke about them in the last part with Jaden Daniels being named the starter over in Washington. Their over under for their total wins is at 6.5.
Mm.
You think Jaden Daniels? I'm not gonna say brings them to the promised land because we're not seeing that from Washington just yet. But can you be an 8-9 team, June?
That's tough. No, I think 6 to 7 wins is where I have this team. Last year they won 4. They started the season 2-5 or so, and then didn't win, you know, nothing but 2 more games to finish the season. I think Jaden Daniels, looking at what they had last year to this year, the roster turnaround isn't so strong. So right now it's like, what do you expect them to do? Is Brandon Ayuk a name that I've heard circulating Washington now that Jahan Dotson's out? Yes. Do I know that that's going to be true? Not at all. And as it stands, they just traded away one of their starting wide receivers. Um, they've gotten better from last year. Just you could even just put it at the quarterback. I mean, you get a Heisman Trophy winner, um, first round pick going to the quarterback. you got to be excited. Last year they had an issue. Sam Howell had 21 interceptions and he was sacked 65 times, and that
Yeah.
led the league. And so, what we don't want to do is put our franchise quarterback, at risk. Joe Burrow kind of dealt with that his rookie year in
Yeah.
Cincinnati, if you remember. So they had to figure that out, bolster up that line, and it worked. They ended up going from Joe Burrow and Zach Taylor looking like what is it going to be to Super Bowl contenders. Um, I think that Washington has to be patient. Dan Quinn as their head coach now, it's a bit confusing that they went the Dan Quinn route because he's an older guy, he's a defensive guy, but they did hire Cliff Kingsbury, and this can be very good, or it can. I don't think that we're gonna like put any type of detriment on the quarterback with Cliff Kingsbury because we didn't see him do bad to Kyler Murray. We just
Yeah.
saw, something that didn't necessarily work out. Um, and it also had to do with personnel and roster makeup. And so that's what kind of gets me here in Washington. They have guys on offense, let's be honest. They do, but it's nothing that pops off the paper except for, Terry McLaurin. So I think there's going to be a lot of struggles, a lot of growing pains, a lot of rookie mistakes, and some things that are just out of his control. That being Jaden Daniels, so they'll probably be at that 6-7 win mark, if not even 5. So um, on their schedule, I was looking at their schedule, and 2 games that I was interested to see um, was Week 8 Chicago,
Hmm.
Week 8 Chicago, and then Week 17 Atlanta. So Week 8 Chicago, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, right? These are 2 guys that were picked here in the first round this year, the 2 best quarterbacks of the draft, the last 2 Heisman Trophy winners. So that's going to be interesting to see them show down in the NFL. And then in Week 17, who knows where Atlanta's season is? Who knows where the health in the quarterback department is? If Michael Penix is playing by then, I think that'll be a pretty interesting game to watch, Jaden Daniels versus Michael Penix.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so that's kind of where I'm at with Washington. As far as like their free agency, it was a little confusing because they went a little older, and this is a team to me that should be wanting to like rebuild around what they have in a franchise quarterback, while still trying to like maintain the pleasure of a Terry McLaurin. You don't want him to just up and leave on you, want him to stay around. But they went and signed Austin Eckler, Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, Dante Fowler, Jeremy Chin. Like these are all like vets. And so I think that does a good thing for your locker room as far as leadership and showing the young guys some ropes. But I mean, this is a fairly older free agency class, and so I'm just kind of curious as to what they were doing here. They let Cameron Curl walk. Um, so yeah, let's see what they can do, man. I'm interested to see what Washington can do, but not intrigued like I don't think that there's going to be anything super special this year. And it's no knock on anybody there, but right now, I don't think the roster is good enough for a strong push.
Yeah, this is a team that lost their final 8 games last season. As you were saying, Sam Howell had a lot of difficulty with his O line. You mentioned Joe Burrow. I mean, I will give him the fact that if he had a bit of an O line in that Super Bowl,
Yeah.
if he had a couple more seconds, because that boy Jamar Chase was out of there that last play. But it's neither here nor there. If you have a little bit of an O line to fixing that, maybe Washington can fix that as well. We'll go over to Dallas in the NFC East. We talked about it as well recently. A lot of players looking to get paid. Everyone's just looking to get their money. It looks like their QB1 is looking to get paid, but's going to play through it. June, Vegas has the NFC East at 3 teams in the playoffs right now. Favorite to be in the playoffs. Is Dallas going to be one of them?
NFC East 3 teams. I mean, are they talking Washington as a playoff team? Are they
All right.
pushing the Giants in the? I'm
Nah,
kind of
nah, they're
lost
push
here.
they're pushing Washington at a -140 to be in the playoffs right now.
And your question was what? I'm sorry.
Is Dallas going to be one of the teams from the NFC East in the playoffs?
If there's three of them, Dallas better be in there. I don't think there's going to be three teams in there. Um, Dallas does have to figure some things out as far as contracts. We have about 9 days of practices and stuff before the season starts. Jamar Chase, we spoke about him last week. He still hasn't gotten a deal done the week, or we spoke about him on Monday,
Yeah, on
and
Monday.
that still didn't get done. So we're expecting, or we're hoping that that can get done possibly before the season. But CeeDee Lamb, I don't think the Cowboys can afford for him to miss time. They need all the wins they can get. Um, it's a weird situation because last week it was like, does Jerry Jones care about winning, fair or foul? And yeah, I think you can say that he does still care about winning. But again, I'll not prove my point, but I'll reiterate my point is that I think he's wanting to do it his way now, at his cost and how he see fit. So um, that's the odd part about all this because you have such a great Pro Bowler and one of the best wide receivers in the league that's still not practicing because of contract issues. But at the end of the day, they're the Dallas Cowboys. They're gonna have to figure it out. They went 12-5 last year. You don't want to see any regression. You'd like to only go up from where you were. And so a 13-4 season would be ideal and would be great, but I don't see them getting there. I see them at that 11-12, win season. And those games, Cowboys Eagles, are going to kind of determine who wins this division. Um, but the three teams coming out of this division is fucking crazy. I'm not gonna lie. That's crazy.
Yeah, Washington. They're saying Washington hitting 7 wins and getting into the playoffs is a possibility as of right now. I think that my favorite game on Dallas's schedule is going to be probably Detroit coming back week 6,
Mm,
4:25
mm,
on Fox. I know Dan Quinn wants that get back. What are some of your
yeah.
key matchups on their schedule this season?
I have week 6 written down here. Another one I'm more excited for is week 8 at San Francisco. I mean, we saw this team last year go to San Francisco and get the brakes beat off of them after being proclaimed as one of the better teams in the league. And San Francisco was going on that run of like they just came out not losing all season for a little minute. And so, um, really, that game and then the Eagles games. Like I think that those Eagles games during the season, those are typically like playoff games every season. We get like some playoff games throughout the regular season, and Eagles Cowboys is typically one of them because those games are going to come down to determine um, who proceeds further or gets that first round by winning the division. So um, definitely want to tap into that Detroit going to Dallas game as well. That's got to be interesting.
I want to kick it over to the chat. Ray in there saying he hopes the 49ers go downhill. That's funny. We'll get to the West next week,
What up,
Ray.
Ray?
Don't worry. We'll get there. We'll get there. And Jay in there saying, shout out ATS. Shout out to you. That boy, it was his birthday. So shout out to Jay.
Hey,
Appreciate
thanks. Shout
you
out to Jay, bro.
stopping. And let's take it up to your side of town. We're gonna have to, we're gonna spin the block, in the AFC East. But let's take it up there real quick. The Giants, Malik Neighbors, this is getting rowdy in training camp. Everybody's, ramping up, getting ready for the season. Vegas does have them at over or under as well at 6.5 wins, but it's favored to the under. Favored to the under. June. Can this be one of those three teams that Vegas has, maybe getting into the playoffs? Or is this going to be one of those continue to rebuild years?
It's definitely not going to be a continued rebuild year. I think the Giants have high expectation. Um, they're expecting Daniel Jones to come in and do the job he's paid to do and do it at a good level. Uh, Brian Dable is not a coach that's gonna, quit. He's not a guy that's gonna preach like maybe we'll get him next time. No, I think he believes in his team and that his guys are good enough to win right now. Obviously, there's some reality there where, you look at the roster and you look at last year and you look at what Daniel Jones has failed to do. It's a little, it's a little like, but in this league, you can't, you got to believe in yourself, right? You can't have doubt. You got to believe in yourself and you got to believe that, what you have and what you brought to training camp for this upcoming season is good enough. And so You had all summer to put together the right team, to put together the right group and personnel. Hopefully, you guys have done that, and you full on believe that you can win a Super Bowl with the roster you have right now. That's the mindset. So, them going 6-11 last year, not necessarily improving this offseason. I mean, losing Saquon Barkley is a blow,
Ugh.
but they did, and they lost Xavier McKinney, which I think is going to hurt them on the back end for defense. But getting Devin Singletary to replace Saquon, obviously two different football players. Devin Singletary is still an underrated, underappreciated running back in this league who's a pro and has made a lot of money doing that. They also go and get Brian Burns, right? So
Facts.
this is the key right here. If Brian Burns can come in here and get 12 sacks, alleviate some of the pressure off Dexter Lawrence, let Kayvon Thibodeau only face one-on-ones all season because you got interior pressure and outside pressure on the other side. I think that does a lot for the defense, which is why I would have been happy if they would have re-signed Xavier McKinney, but the money wasn't there for that. But an interesting free agent that they signed as well, or traded for. No, they signed him, Drew Lock. Because hey, if Daniel Jones doesn't work out, I don't know how long that leash on Daniel Jones is going to be. I don't know that they're going to have so much patience with him that if they start off 1-3, he's going to still be that starting quarterback. So Drew Lock got to be ready. I think he is ready. I'm not saying he's, going to be the guy in New York, but he has the confidence to be an athlete in New York, quarterback in New York. And look for Drew Lock to make some noise if Daniel Jones either one gets hurt again or just can't come up with it. But I'm having hopeful thoughts for Daniel Jones this season. I killed him, I crushed him one off season and he came out and balled out. Last year, I knew that wasn't going to be the case where he just goes and has the same season. However, this season, I would hope that he takes what he's learned from last season and years prior, grows from that injury, and can come out and just ball for this Giants team because they can be good. They have a defense. They can get to that 7-8 win, mark. But everything's got to go. Everything's got to go right.
No, I definitely agree. I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see Neighbors. Daniel Jones, I hope can get it together. Vegas has him around 25 touchdown passes. I don't know if he's going to get there for it, but you know me, I like to see the city of New York do well, no matter, I'm just kind of affiliated, to a certain extent. I like to see the city of New York do well. I think it's good for sports, but the Giants making the playoffs, very unlikely, but I do see them at around that 5-6 win range. Me personally, June, about 5-6 range. And I mean, when you say things like, what were you saying? My fault.
No, continue.
No, I was gonna say when you're saying that they're gonna win those many games. Are there really any key games on their schedule?
So this is where I was going. Key games. I really just wrote bad teams, and I looked at their schedule, and I thought, really weeks 2 and 9 versus Washington, and at Washington, and then Carolina week 10. So how do they play against these teams? Because the Giants shouldn't be the worst team in the league. They shouldn't be a bottom 5 team in the league. They should not have a top 5 pick next year. And they didn't last year. They had a number 6 pick. They shouldn't have. They should strive to not want to have a top 10 pick. Honestly, that's their next level of like getting better. So if they can play against Washington and Carolina and do something to them because they're the better team, then there's some promise there. But I'm not going to look at them to upset any other teams or beat any other teams because right now the Giants are who they are, and we don't know them to be much more than the 6-11 output they had last year.
Whew. We'll kick it over to the AFC. I want to stay in New York right now, but we're gonna take it a little up, up Western New York to Buffalo, and the Bills looking to possibly win the division again, hopefully, right? Steph Diggs not there anymore. Shipped him to Houston. June, how big of an impact is that going to be for them to, run this division back?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, Josh Allen said they don't necessarily miss him, but at the end of the day, they did play well even if he didn't. I think they played better when he had less catches and targets. But he's still Stephon Diggs at the end of the day. Um, Curtis Samuel can be a good replacement. What I'm excited to see is how Joe Brady uses the offense, because with Josh Allen, you don't need, that superstar receiver. However, I think that losing Diggs and losing Gabe Davis and losing Trent Sherfield, like you lost a lot of that receiving core. You know what I'm saying? The only guy that played in that core was like Khalil Shakur. And it's
Yeah.
like he's not your number one. So for you to have Curtis Samuel there now, it's big, but is it enough? That's what remains to be answered, and we'll see. We'll see soon enough. Lyle Collins comes in on at the tackle position uh, on the right side, and they also went and got safety Mike Edwards for more depth. But they did lose Jordan Poyer. They did lose Puna Ford. So the Bills to me aren't going to be the same team we've seen the last 4 or 5 years, competing against Kansas City and at the top of the AFC for most of the year. I think the Dolphins take this division ultimately this year. Um, and
Okay.
while the Dolphins had a great opportunity to win the division last year, we'll talk about them in a second. They lost the last 2 games of the season, and it was a bad loss in Baltimore, and then it was a bad loss to those Bills at home, um, which shipped they ass to fucking Kansas City for the coldest damn game in 50 years. And so
Yeah.
it was either going to be, I think, beat the Bills and then play the Bills at home, or lose to the Bills and play the Chiefs on the road. And I mean, yeah, pick your poison in a sense, but I think playing football in 85-degree weather and 80-degree weather is always going to be better than 6 degrees or so, or -6 at that. So um, Joe Brady and Sean McDermott have a lot of coaching to do this year. Josh Allen has a lot of proving to do this year that he is a
Absolutely.
great quarterback and he can be a guy, regardless of the makeup of the receiving core and all that. They have Dalvin's little brother, James Cook. So what now? What now? The defense is good. What are we going to show for Buffalo? Because you guys are another one of those teams that you'll make it there, can't do nothing about it.
Yeah. And that's what we're really waiting for him to break through. I do think that, I mean, as much as I like to rank on Josh Allen, I think that he's one of the closer in that, Mahomes class. I think he's one of the ones that if he can figure out, I've always said, figure out how to finish the games, man, because he's given us some legendary moments in some
Yeah.
crazy games, and we've seen him like do some crazy things, but he's just always falls short. I'm very interested to see Week 4 Sunday night primetime, Buffalo at Baltimore, which means Week 3 we get Chiefs at Atlanta, and then Week 4 Sunday night we get Baltimore
Yeah.
versus Bills. I think that's one of the most interesting games to me in their schedule. What are you looking at?
I want to see as well Baltimore week 4 in Baltimore. It's going to be a tough challenge for Josh Allen. I mean, just Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson is exciting for me. Sunday night football, and then another Sunday night football matchup they have week 13 versus San Francisco. I think San Francisco is one of those teams with a target on their back, right? They're there every year. They're the team that I'm talking about that the Bills are like, right? Always there, always at the best, but can't really finish it off. And so San Francisco has a mission this year. They should be on a mission. And for all these teams like the Dolphins, like, the Jets, the Bills, these are a lot of good AFC teams that are going to have, that target. So it's more like a San Francisco thing, if you will. But hey, I'm not going to lie. Um, Buffalo, San Francisco, Sunday night, sign me up.
And I mean the Chiefs game later on in the year, if I'm not mistaken, week 11.
Oh, okay.
Week 11, the Chiefs that week, I think is going to be, that's always a fun and very interesting game to watch. The energy is always in there and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I real quick though, like, is there a shot Buffalo doesn't make the playoffs?
I don't think so. I mean, unless they do something weird and lose some divisional games or
I
something,
mean, you
and
got
those
to
count.
just think. I'm just taking into account, like, to me, Indianapolis. Um, you also have Cincinnati. You know, these are two teams who didn't make the playoffs last year, and the Jets. And these are just the three off the top of my head. These aren't like any other sort of contenders that might be in the running for we could make the playoffs this year. So I'm just thinking like, all right, three teams off rip that might make the playoffs. The Bills are going to be in a spot where they have to win a lot of games, and I don't know that 11. I don't know that 11 can do it. 11 should get them in the playoffs.
Hmm.
11 should get them in the playoffs, but it might not win the division. I think the Dolphins are looking at 12 to 13 wins for themselves. Um, and if they can do that, they're going to put the Bills in a very tough spot to fight for that wild card because, again, teams like the Jets, Bengals, Colts are teams that didn't make the playoffs last year that I'm expecting to, do a little more this year.
Mm. They're at $100 bet to win 750 to win the AFC as a whole.
Mm.
And I mean, you're saying they're gonna have to win a lot more games than they think they're gonna have to win. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I'm saying like 11 games to me for the Bills might get you to the playoffs, but it still might not win the division. And 11 games might get you. I think 11 games isn't the biggest number of wins that we see this season in the AFC. So um, they just got to make sure they stack wins as they can.
I mean, they're favored to win the division at plus 160, and I'll get to the second division that's favored into them in a second, which is when we spin the block in New York. But I want to kick it over to New England,
Mm.
least favorite to win the division, plus 2,700. I mean, why the QB1 room is looking very, sluggish but interesting. How do you feel about this team this year?
New coach, new quarterback, new opportunity. You go from 4 wins last year. I mean, anything is better than four. The sky's the limit. Like, you lose Mac Jones, you lose Mac Wilson, Mike Gesicki, Trent Brown, Jalen Mills, but you bring in guys like KJ Osborne, Antonio Gibson, Austin Hooper, and then most importantly, Jacoby Brissett. And you mentioned that sluggish was the word you described their quarterback room to be. And yeah, I mean, Jacoby Brissett being the veteran that he is, and starting in New England, um, being comfortable there, I think it's good for them, and he probably will get to start week one. But Drake May has the arm talent, and he can wow you. So I wouldn't be surprised if they want to just kind of go out with him. Anything is going to be better than four. They got to get 5, 6 wins this year, make it a little competitive. But if we're being totally honest, they're probably going to find themselves close to 4 wins again, just based on the makeup of the roster. Uh, I look at their schedule and I say key games. I wrote who cares. There's not one game that I care to watch New England play. Not this season.
Not even against your Colts, man. Like that's typically a legendary, matchup, man.
I mean, this is where we've come. This is the NFL we are in now. New England Patriots are irrelevant.
Mm.
Irrelevant. And I'd rather be more proud of that than the fact that we beat them by 3 scores.
Sheesh. I mean, live your truth, bro. Let's take it back over to you right now in New York City. We'll slide on over to the Jets. They are the second favorite team to win the AFC East at plus 170. I mean, we talked about that man, and he seems to be back, minus the distractions, with a new look on the season. Are you looking at the Jets in the playoffs this year, June?
1,000%. With good health, I think that this Jets team can win 11, 12 games. They have a great defense. Like, I don't want to understate how good of a defense they had. Losing Bryce Huff and Jordan Whitehead is going to hurt a little bit, but They do add Solomon Thomas, they do add Hassan Reddick, but there is where it gets interesting because you trade for Hassan Reddick, and you kind of mentioned to him that you'd be ready to pay him. You
Mm-hmm.
ready to work out a deal with them, and now you don't want to come to terms with the fact that he's asking for more money, and you want him to do this prove it deal when it's just like, that's not what we kind of thought was going to happen. So hopefully the Jets don't do wrong by him, and they actually just, figure out a deal for him. But in the event that he doesn't, whoever it is going to get a very, very elite pass rusher for Christmas this year. Again, hopefully for the Jets' sake, they can keep Hassan Reddick. He's an amazing talent, and he's going to be vital for that defense, especially trying to make a long playoff run. Aaron Rodgers coming back, it feels like free agency hit again, right? Like let's be hyped for that. Mike Williams, Tyron Smith, and Morgan Moses, both of those two added to the offensive line with Mike Williams being a number two receiver behind Garrett Wilson. This offense has a chance to be very elite. I mean,
I agree.
Brees Hall, excuse me, in the backfield with a Hall of Fame quarterback, and then Garrett Wilson. I mean, we're seeing what he's doing in training camp, and it's embarrassing defenses. So it's a lot to like about this Jets team this season. I look at their schedule, and off the bat, I mean, they go week one at San Francisco on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, show
Obviously,
me what you
last
can
year,
do.
yeah, obviously last year you know, it was unfortunate what happened on Monday Night Football. They played the Bills and 4 snaps in. We know what happened, but um, Aaron Rodgers is going to see his first action against Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and Travarius Ward. It's got to be tough. This is also a team that he is familiar with. Like this is
Yeah.
a team. That's why shout out to Ray. Ray is in those comments saying he wants to see the start of the 49ers downfall because those same 49ers beat the Packers in back-to-back NFC championships to go play Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, interesting stuff here, bro. And then I got a week 15 at Jacksonville. I don't know. I want to see a Trevor Lawrence versus Aaron Rodgers AFC battle late in the season. I think that Jacksonville is going to be floating somewhere around that, bubble wild card spot.
Absolutely.
And so week 15 versus Aaron Rodgers, Trevor Lawrence, what you got? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that their schedule actually favors this, I guess notion that they'll, come in second in the division and make a run for the playoffs. Like you said, week one at San Fran, and then it kind of, you know, eases up for a couple of weeks. I mean, when
Mm-hmm.
you're going to you go to Tennessee week two, New England, then you have New England in town, Denver in town, Minnesota. I think it kind of frees up until week six when they got to play Buffalo again. Personally,
Yeah.
no disrespect to any of those other teams that I mentioned. Pittsburgh's always a tough out. You know what I mean? Mike Tomlin's
Right.
coaches the hell out of his teams. They play, they leave it all on the field for him. I mean, New England, Houston, I think will be an interesting game. They do have to play you as you being the Colts. Arizona, we don't know what's going to make up of them, but they, weren't any. I know, their QB1 went down, but they weren't any good last year either. Second half of the season, like we said, Jacksonville having to play Miami twice. I like that they don't have to play Buffalo like two consecutive. They can kind of, they take a breather at
Yeah.
least after Pittsburgh. So I think that their schedule favors them to definitely make a run for the playoffs. I mean, and barring health, Aaron Rodgers, being on point, healthy, and their defense continue to dominate, I don't see why the Jets should not be in the playoffs. I mean, we were talking about it last year. We were talking about them being a playoff team, and like you said, unfortunately, what happened, and they weren't able to get there.
Yeah. Also, Devonte Adams should be a Jet before the deadline. Like to me, the writing's on the wall. It's inevitable. He has no business anymore being in Vegas. He's a 30-something-year-old receiver who wants to win now. His best friend is playing in New York. Get him to New York. Put him alongside Garrett Wilson and let it rip. Like give it up. Give what you need up to the Raiders and get Devonte Adams.
And get Devontae Adams. Let's head over to Miami right quick. The Dolphins looking to third favored plus 215 to win this division. They had it in the palm of their hand last season. Ended up, having a downfall towards the end of the season. Do you see them possibly making a run for the Bills in this division?
This is the Dolphins' division to lose, man. we're looking at roster makeup now. We're looking at, even the quarterback situation. We're looking at what they did that last year versus what they're excited to do this year. You take all that into effect, and I think Miami has to be the favorite. I understand Josh Allen is the MVP kind of guy, and the media loves him, but I think what Mike McDaniel has been able to do in Miami as far as schematics is put his players in the best position to win. And they've got Devin A. Chain, they've got Raheem Mostert, they've got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I mean, the speed between them four is like, U.S. women's men and track, men and women's track and field. Serious. So you literally have gold level Olympic speed in Miami with a guy who throws as accurate as anybody in the league. We saw the leading passing. We saw him lead the league in passing last year. So the key for the Dolphins to me this year, what's going to be interesting is, can you guys win the big games against, not even the big games? Can you just win the games against the good teams?
Yeah.
Because you can beat up on, and bully on the younger teams, the teams with less experience and that aren't as good. But when you can beat the really good teams in the regular season, when it doesn't mean nothing, and then go on to beat them when it does mean something, it means a lot. And the Dolphins haven't won a meaningful game. I cough when I say that because we all know when I say meaningful, we mean playoff. Haven't won a playoff game in over 20 years. That has to change. I think that this team right now is under some of the most pressure to win a game in the playoffs. And I don't say Tua is under the most pressure as a quarterback. I don't say Mike McDaniel is on the hot seat if he doesn't win. I think that this team and this franchise, based on what they were doing 3 years ago versus where they've gotten this team with the talent and the makeout on the roster, there's no excuse why you shouldn't win one playoff game, especially if you win your division and you got a first round home game. There should be no excuse. So Miami, I got them at 12 plus wins this year. Um,
Hmm.
I like the addition of Jordan Poyer and Kendall Fuller back there in the defensive backfield. You lose Robert Hunt on the line, but you sign in Isaiah Wynn. You know, losing Jerome Baker, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Xavier Howard. That's tough. We got to take a pause right there. That's a lot of depth. That's a lot of good players. But um, you're getting some guys back off injury, and also Christian Wilkins to me is the biggest departure this offseason. So you're just gonna have to really, really rally around the guys you have in that locker room on defense. Still have Jalen Ramsey. You still got Jordan Phillips. And some guys out there. So that offense got to click. Got to click.
It has to. It has to. Tua is gonna have to, close when he has to close. Like you said, win those meaningful games. His stats, personal stats, have been in incline. Like we were just talking about
Yeah.
on the last pod. So there's no reason. I think you're absolutely right. They barely let it slip last season from them. I think that this division is theirs for the winning. So you're saying it's crazy that they're third favorite to win this division. You think they should be more favored than the Jets and definitely more favored. Well, more favored than Buffalo and definitely more favored than the Jets.
I'm sorry. To what? Win the division?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Like when are the Dolphins gonna be the favorite? When are the Dolphins gonna have the expected results? Like I don't think we can just continue to let them be this team who, oh, they shouldn't be here. No, the Dolphins should absolutely be here. The Dolphins have fucking talent. They have coaching. They have quarterback. They have everything they need on a team to be successful. And last year, unfortunately, they met their match in the playoffs with the elements. But guess what? There's always going to be elements at that time of the year. So if you can't win enough games to put yourself at home throughout the playoffs, as Kansas City does, and works their advantage, then we need to play better.
No, absolutely, and not to bring up old news, but the Tua and Flores exchange this week just kind of took every excuse off the table now for Tua. It's like there's no excuses now. Like you have to get this done. You got the bag. You know what I mean? You now you're making these comments. So there's no more excuses for you. You have to get this done this year.
Yeah.
You have to lead this team back to some meaningful wins and hopefully the promised land. June, you got anything else you want to get into from either division? I know you know the NFC hasn't had a back to back winner since the Eagles did it in 01, if I'm not mistaken, 01, 02. So, you got anything else you want to get into before we without with either of these divisions?
No. Do you have anything else outside of the division?
I do
Or are we
not.
wrapping up?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
wrapping it up.
Before we wrap up, earlier this week, or it might have been yesterday or today, whatever, but there was a gentleman by the name of Du- Duquette, Daryl Doucette or Daryl Duquette. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Clearly, I am. I said two options. This gentleman plays flag football. He's an Olympic level flag football player. He came out and had some comments about Patrick Mahomes and how he thinks that, it's a little disrespectful for. It was along the lines of like he thinks that it's disrespectful for the NFL players to just like assume that they can play, at the Olympic level for flag football when they have guys that really, really do. He went on to say like he thinks he's even probably better than Patrick Mahomes. Uh, and his IQ is better than Patrick Mahomes or whatever. Listen, EP, the same reaction you feel inside right now is what I felt.
Did you see the
Um,
highlights though? Did you see the
I
highlights?
saw the fucking highlight, and everything changed. Everything changed. This guy has all my respect. As a matter of fact, I hope he is our starting quarterback for Team USA.
Get
Starting
the
something like
fuck
this
out
guy,
of
I
here,
need
bro.
him on Team USA,
Stop, bro.
balling out. This guy is an
Stop.
elite athlete. This man has film, and if you are a flag football player, you need to be watching this guy and trying to be like Daryl House Duquette or
Hey,
Duquette.
you're right. If you are a flag football player, if you are playing football in that realm, you know, and you can do certain maneuvers and evade players in like weird ways, chaotic as dips and crunches while you're running on the field. Nah, yeah, more power to you, bro. You should definitely represent the country at the very least because goddamn, bro. Yo, a lot of EPL this weekend. I'm not gonna lie. I'll get into that a little bit for a second. A lot of EPL this weekend, week two. So I'm gonna be up early Saturday watching soccer. 7-8. Well, the first game is like at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. So I'll be up early watching some soccer this weekend, getting some things done. You got any significant plans this weekend, June?
Nah, man, we're gonna go with the flow, bro. We're gonna go with the flow. Oh, the Locks is throwing a party tomorrow, actually. So there's an event at the Hidden.
Fire.
I'll tap in with them. See
That's
what I'm
gas. That's
tap in
gas.
with them. I'll tap in with the party.
Travis
That should be
Scott had a pop up in Atlanta today. I didn't get, I heard too late, but I'm sure it was lit.
that's lit. Yeah, man. I'm excited for the weekend, to say the least.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, as we cross the 54-minute mark, this has been your All Things Sports NFL East Division breakdowns. We'll see you next week for a every week show and for the West Division breakdowns. Appreciate you tapping in. If you tapped in on the live, we appreciate your time. You could have been anywhere in the world. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.
Peace.